Hello and welcome to the first of our Destination Energy webinars. I'm Steve Barrett and I'll be hosting the series of webinars over the next 12 months, all of which are focused on attracting, educating and getting real people at all levels in the stages in their careers into real jobs. Transition to net zero energy system is not a future ambition, it's happening now. Between 2030 and the energy sector alone faces a once-in-a-generation workforce challenge. We need tens of thousands of additional people across engineering, construction, networks, digital and data, project delivery, and specialist technical roles. And that's all being driven by three things which are happening at the same time. One, unprecedented infrastructure investment. Two, rapid technology change. And three, a workforce given the significant proportion expected to retire over the next decade. And the UK is committing to record levels of investment into energy networks, renewables, flexibility, storage systems, resilience. But capital investment alone doesn't deliver net zero. We need people. We need people in the right place, the right skills, or projects will slow down, costs will increase, and they may not actually get delivered. And that's why the workforce planning is now as important as infrastructure planning. There are really two workforce challenges we must solve in parallel. The first is an immediate challenge up to 2030. Much of this demand will not be met by people straight out of education alone. It'll be met by people already in work and those with transferable skills, those seeking a career change, and those moving from adjacent sectors into energy. This means reskilling, upskilling, career pathways into energy roles, and making the sector visible and accessible to people who may never have considered it before. And the second challenge is what comes next, building a workforce that sustains the energy system well beyond 2030. That future depends on a diverse pipeline of apprentices, graduates, and entry-level talent. People who want purposeful work, people who want to make a difference, people who can see energy not just as a job, but as a way or part of being the solution to solve that climate change, energy security, and long-term prosperity for us and for generation that follows. So why does it matter today then? Today is about exactly that. This isn't a policy webinar. It's not about strategy. It's not about documents. It's about people. Real journeys into energy careers, how individuals found their way into the sector, the barriers they faced, the opportunities they discovered, and why they chose to stay. So my challenge today is to inspire the next generation, provide information, and most importantly, show that there is a place for people in this sector, whatever their starting point. So rather than I talk about this in theory, we're going to hear directly from people who are living the sector at the moment. And for that, we're today joined by Lorna Archer, Abigail Mitchell, and Kareena Sandhu. So if I can come to each and ask you to introduce yourselves before we get into the questions, please.
Do you want me to jump in, Stephen?
Go for it, absolutely.
Super. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Lorna Archer. I'm currently working for SGN. For those of you that don't know, SGN is the gas network that supplies end users across Scotland, Southern England, and also areas of Northern Ireland. So we're a gas distribution network operating across the UK. My role currently is as a project manager, and I'm involved in a hydrogen project called H105, which is all about evidencing the social acceptance of hydrogen for use in domestic heat.
Thanks very much, Lorna. I'm looking forward to hear all about that project as we go through these questions. And Abigail. Abigail? No, Abigail? We've definitely got an Abigail. Okay, let's go to Kareena.
Sorry, I think Abigail was on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute.
I'll let you introduce
yourself. I just did a big speech.
Thanks, Abigail. Let's go again. Abigail.
Sorry.
That's
okay,
all right.
So I'm Abby. I'm a graduate at M Group Energy. M Group, if you haven't heard of it, is a UK and Ireland-based infrastructure services provider focusing on water, energy, telecommunications, things like that. I'm currently working as a sustainability advisor. I joined the business 8 months ago in the graduate program, and I'm currently completing a rotational scheme. So I've just moved into my new role in network infrastructure, and my first placement was in energy efficiency and retrofit.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Abigail. We got there in the end. And finally, Kareena.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Kareena Sandhu. So I am a substation craftsperson. My role is very vague, but I'll explain it more. So I work on high voltage equipment. So my day-to-day activities is kind of completing maintenance activities on the piece of equipment so that they're up to standard, that they operate and that they can carry the electricity essentially to your homes at the end of the day. I completed a 3-year apprenticeship very recently. So it's currently my 3rd year now, but I've just come out of my apprenticeship, completed my endpoint assessment and my interviews, and I'm officially in my role doing my maintenance activities and day-to-day tasks like that.
Fantastic, Kareena. Thanks very much. So, look, we've got a broader spectrum as we possibly can on this first of 12 webinars. And really the purpose of this is just to start tapping into what's the opportunities out there and how do we get real people into those jobs. So I'm going to go on to a series of questions in a second. But before I do so, can I ask the audience to think about what they would like to ask our panelists and pop the questions in the Q&A section. The chat function is off for this session. So without further ado, I'll get into the questions. So first of all, to all three, I mean, as a starting point, what first attracted you to the energy sector and what did you think work in the energy sector would be like before you started? Lorna, as soon as you started us on the last one, shall I come to you first?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Stephen. So I suppose to answer the end of the question first, I didn't have any preconceptions. I sort of fell into the energy sector. I didn't move into it career-wise through a sort of traditional route. But my passions really lie with the environment and sustainability, making sure that we're doing everything that we can to preserve ecosystems and habitats for flora and fauna. I'm a total nature geek, to put it bluntly. So by degree, I studied zoology, and quickly realised the biggest way I could make an impact to preserve the environment was tackling our energy crisis, and looking for cleaner solutions and options for decarbonisation of energy to have sort of impact on a wider scale. So that's, I guess, what attracted me into it. Was it felt like this is where I could make the biggest impact for the things that I am interested in and passionate about.
Fantastic, Lorna. And I think that's that seems to be a common thread that's running through. I think people that are coming into industry, isn't it, thinking about that, what's the impact on the environment, but massively interested in zoology, into energy. I love it. That's brilliant. So it shows that there is a potential career option for whichever route you're coming through on your program. But look, that's really interesting to hear. Abigail, what about yourself?
So for me, I think energy tied together most of the areas I found most interesting during my degree. So I did environmental engineering, and things like sustainability, strategy, and the technical side, energy seems to cover all of that. Even things like waste I'm working on, which is something that I didn't think would be covered in energy, but I'm doing stuff with that now. So it all seems relevant to me now, and a lot of it is what you hear about in the news. So I feel like I'm working on real problems in real time, and it's kind of crucial for tackling bigger global issues like climate change. So it's nice to feel like I'm making a difference, even if it is just in small steps.
Brilliant. I love that. I mean, there is always a connection. I always think with the energy sector, it doesn't matter what role you're in. There is that link to the bigger picture, isn't it? You know, the environment, the global warming challenge, etc. So I think it's really important to hold on to that link. But yeah, I mean, two from environment. I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, let's see where we go with that then. Kareena, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I think for me it was more of the curiosity side. I did A levels and GCSEs, so I came straight out of school, and I feel like I never really enjoyed one subject more than the other, but I knew I did not want to go to university and I wanted to do something practical, hands-on, where I'm using my hands, working out in the field. So I feel like that is definitely what attracted me to the energy sector. And I think I didn't really know much about it. All I knew is kind of what I learned in GCSE science, is where you learn about National Grid and how they have a huge transmission system. But also, yeah, it was just more curiosity that kind of landed me in the place that I am, and it was very lucky because I very much enjoy it. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that's good. That's a nice touch at the end. At least you're enjoying it. That's
Yeah.
brilliant. Look, and I think that's a real life stuff, right? So if you're going into a job, you need to enjoy it. And I think you've got that bigger purpose. I think that's that's really important, isn't it? So that's good to hear. And look, I mean, thanks so much to all of you. I guess from how that then reflects into perhaps people that are coming in at a later stage in their career. I think it's really important to think about, those jobs are not just at those, starting as you're coming in, being an apprenticeship or a graduate, but there are those direct entry roles. And actually the skills which come across from other industries or other jobs which you've been in the past, I think are definitely transferable. I think it's worth people thinking about, if you are at that mid stage in your career, think about how you come across then, definitely of interest. And certainly myself, coming from a forces background and then moving into industry and having that transferable skills, which which I learned over many years around the practicalities of training delivery and things like systematic approach to training, etc. I think they're all really important things which actually are transferable into industry, and there's always a need for those. So certainly worth thinking about that. So look, I'll move on to the next question, because I think this is always really interesting, because people look at what they see in the press, and there are all sorts of things happening, and we talk about things on a geopolitical scale about what's happening in the Middle East, and what's going to happen in terms of energy security in the future. But I just wanted to kind of explore the reality versus expectation. So when you were looking at a job, or when you saw the job and the role, and I mean, how does that compare from where you saw on the outside to when you actually got into industry? So again, shall I go this slightly different order here? So Abigail, shall I come to you first?
Yeah. So I think before I started, I imagined it was really technical, loads of spreadsheets, lots of people in high vis. And don't get me wrong, there is that. But there's also a lot more variety and working with people to create solutions. I think it's a lot of, as I said, small steps with collaboration and planning involved. For me, I've experienced two different realities. So my first placement was very desk-based and people-focused, whereas my new rotation is a lot of traveling to site and contracting for energy companies like National Grid. So it's been different, but I think the collaboration and compliance planning has been present throughout.
Brilliant. Love that. That's really interesting. And Lorna, shall I come to you next? What about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for me, I assumed coming into a energy-based role, working with the utilities, that things like an engineering degree would be a sort of prerequisite for that. Whilst that's required for a lot of roles, there's a huge amount more that doesn't require that. And I think the breadth of work and opportunity that is available from a utility company such as SGN. I work cross department with colleagues in regulation, in commercial, in legal, in metering, in the operational side of the business. You get so much exposure to different departments as well, so you actually get a huge breadth of opportunity and a range of subject matters that you didn't even know were delivered by a utility business in the first place. So yeah, I think for me, just a huge learning curve, and I guess that learning journey is something that I'm still on, and I think I will be for years and decades to come if I stick with SGN, because there is just so much to learn. And I think the people matter so much. I don't think it's a role that I would continue to be in long term if it wasn't for the people that are involved. And as Abby was saying, that so much of it is working with your colleagues and coming together to adopt best practice, but benefit from, you know, diversity in thought and everything that other colleagues can offer, and have that collaborative approach to problem solving. It's perhaps just much more engaging and vibrant than I thought it could have been on paper.
Oh, thanks, Lorna. That's really interesting. I just wanted to tap into that a little bit further because obviously a lot of people won't know SGN and you know what's going on within the business, and the role of hydrogen in the future is going to be really important. So I mean, I'm absolutely fantastic to see you're operating within that part of the business. I mean, how do you see that panning out over the next few years, just for people on the call?
Yeah, sure. I mean, steering away from the policy side of things, which we said this webinar would
Yeah.
not be about.
Absolutely.
But you know, as a network, we transport a sort of carbon heavy fuel, which is natural gas, and we know that the energy sector is faced with the challenge of decarbonisation. So naturally, like all businesses, we're looking at alternative ways and greener gas solutions essentially. Um, we are not backing one horse in that. We're looking at all of the possible solutions that could help us reach that decarbonisation goal, one of which is hydrogen. The particular project that I'm working on is looking at hydrogen for domestic heat. But obviously hydrogen has applications across industry, commercial processes, transport and power generation as well. So it can essentially accommodate all three areas of the energy trilemma.
Yeah. Fantastic. And look, that's a great point, because I mean I suppose um the thing we need to think about is those roles which are not just in existing infrastructure at the moment, but actually as those roles start to evolve, there will be new people needed in those new roles, and therefore the expansion in whichever direction that the gas networks take is going to be super interesting. And I especially am super interested and super excited about hydrogen and other gases, because you know, we simply don't have the energy storage capacity in the UK to be able to go down. You know, we don't have that alternative at the moment. So I think it's a really exciting time for industry, and definitely not wanting to get into the policy side. Certainly not on this call. But look, thanks very much for that. And Kareena, what about yourself? I mean, how does the reality of where you are now, you know, massive organisation you're working in, what's that been like?
I feel like obviously you'll read a job description, you'll see a kind of job, and it will be always different. So for me, when I applied to my apprenticeship, I think it kind of says, you know, you're doing a lot of training, you're doing a lot of learning, also you're going to be on site. And then I think when it kind of pans out, so when I started, a lot of my training was, I think for nearly 2 years of my apprenticeship, it was traveling up to Nottingham to do training, and it was really, really intense. I mean, we were doing exams every week, like tests, interviews. There was so much that you don't really kind of think about when you sign up for the job. Also, like meeting so many new people, traveling across the UK to complete like a portfolio of evidence. I think that was a huge thing. Just knowing how many substations there are all across the UK is unbelievable, and it's astonishing. Also, I think coming into the role, I didn't realise that I would be with 2 other females out of 100 boys. So I think that was kind of hard to get used to, I guess, because I mean I came from a mixed school, so you know 50% boys, 50% girls, and then you know you come into an industry and there's only 2 or 3 girls to kind of stick with. But I think it definitely rounds you as a person, teaches you how to work with different people, and kind of also put forward your opinions and thoughts on it, and also be able to kind of do things like this to kind of promote apprenticeships for females to make it more inclusive. So yeah, the reality was definitely different, but in a good way, I would say.
Thanks for that. And look, there's a couple of things coming out there about people, you know, I think it's really important. And also you mentioned the diversity. Look, I mean, we have a real opportunity here, don't we? I think as an industry to be able to attract more women and more ethnic diversity into the industry.
Yeah.
And there's an awful lot of work going on there. And I think that
There is.
and that challenge around you know well, what do we look like now? What are people seeing when they arrive? Well, look, you know, that I think some of the initiatives which we've got going on at the moment, I think are really exciting. But yeah, there's definitely a huge opportunity for us to start impacting that. And there's jobs for everyone here, isn't there? I mean, there's
jobs for so many people. I think it's just about promoting it. So from when I was at school, I feel like it should have kind of been pushed towards students, or students should learn about it more, you know, join in the energy industry, because a lot of people like me would have never known about it until I looked for an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So
it's got to be, and we've all got to work together. And look, that's part of this program, right? So we want to make sure that over the next 12 months we're telling people about you know, that diversity and how we are improving things, and actually just open people's eyes to some of those opportunities which are there, and therefore you know, get more people to look at the energy industry as a career choice. But yeah, good stuff. Look, thanks so much for that, and really interesting. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, we mentioned this earlier, just purpose and impact. You know, everyone needs a purpose, right? So you come to work and you want to be able to deliver a good job, you want to do something. I mean, how well do you feel connected to the wider purpose of that energy transition, you know, in your day-to-day work? And can you give us an example which everyone can resonate with, perhaps, on the call? Who shall I come to? Kareena, shall I come to you first this time?
yes, I think for me is kind of knowing where we are in the energy industry. So obviously we're a major part of it. If it wasn't for the substations, there wouldn't be any electricity going to homes. So I think knowing that I help in that sense, and working on the big pieces of equipment that help transfer the electricity to our homes, to different places across England, is really important. And I think a major example is, I don't know if you heard of the North Hyde, where I think the airport down there turned off because one of our transformers blew up. So that was a huge major thing. Yeah, definitely, it was in the news. People couldn't go on their planes. I think knowing that obviously we linked to that in a way, but also knowing that we helped kind of understand what happened, how that happened, and understanding how our substations supply that much electricity to airports and major things like that, kind of definitely plays a part in my role, like helping to think of new strategies and new pieces of equipment that we can use to power airports, like data centers, and all across the UK. So I think definitely knowing that the pieces of equipment I'm working on are kind of keeping the lights on. So
fantastic. Great example there. I did pose the question, so fantastic example. Thanks very much. And Lorna, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think Kareena makes some really good points. I think across all of the utilities, it's that core focus on the end user. That's what it's all about at the end of the day, and what we do help to continue to deliver a reliable service to that end user, and it's real people that are affected when things go wrong. So there's a duty of care involved there, and obviously SGN and the other networks and utilities, safety is always of critical importance. So again, that duty of care element comes into it. So it becomes a safety culture of, you know, you have responsibility and accountability because you're associated with that company, and you want everyone to, you know, go home safe from the company, but also end users that you provide that service to are kept safe as well. But I think when you've got that passion and drive for something, you live and breathe it every day. You know, when you clock off at the end of the working day, you don't stop thinking about it. It kind of becomes part of your personality, and kind of builds itself into your core values. And I know that I have, you know, extensive conversations with friends and family about what I do, and you know, there'll be naysayers against green gas or hydrogen in particular, and it's always interesting to have those conversations, and you just find yourself naturally becoming a bit of an advocate for the energy transition, and you end up promoting it out with work.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's a great example about feeling that purpose, because it is a whole energy system approach to this. And when we talk about things like CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, and storage, and what we're looking at around some of the more perhaps carbon intensive and taking the carbon out, and taking that forward as an aspect, which is which is really important. And sometimes we can think about some of those kind of large scale projects when there are quite a well, there are hundreds and thousands of smaller projects which are working very hard on delivering that transition to net zero. And we talked earlier about the environment and climate. So they're all really important aspects of what we're doing in the UK, and as well as the energy security side, which has been quite clearly demonstrated by recent events across the world. So we need to keep a focus on that. But yeah, great example, and good to go on. So Abigail, from your perspective.
So from my perspective, since I've moved into my new sustainability advisor role, I've realized that for the greener side, it's not just about ticking boxes and just doing things to the minimum. You need to have real conversations with teams about how to do things better, and so it's just sustainable in the long term. For example, I'm working on the Great Grid partnership and helping M Group achieve PAS 2080 status. So I'm trying to help make action plans that make our projects more sustainable, such as moving away from diesel generators and, as Lorna said, hydrogen fuel cells, testing hydrogen vehicles if we can use them on site, things like that. And also going to site, visiting overhead lines and seeing them being replaced with more efficient lines just shows like how we're moving energy to people's homes and how it affects people just at the small bit as well as like as a whole. There's a whole line being done, but it's going to individual people and it's affecting them.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's great to hear, and you just reminded me of something which I think is really important. So for people out there looking potentially at the energy sector as a role, we often think about we go straight to the asset owners. Kareena, no offense here, but you generally see National Grid, which is quite prominent in the news, or even some of the other networks across distribution and some of the big generators, and perhaps some of the retail names as well. But the reality is that many of these projects get delivered by much smaller organizations. Not saying that M Group is small in any way, but there are quite a lot of those tier ones, tier twos, and even tier threes, kind of very small organizations, which will be manufacturing or developing or installing certain pieces of equipment, which are still absolutely critical components to that transition to net zero and beyond. And I think it's worth organizations, and I'll pop some links up on the screen at the end of this webinar, but it's worth exploring potential roles in many of those other small organizations as well, because there is an entire ecosystem and infrastructure which sits behind these, which is not just purely delivered by those by the asset owners. That supply chain is absolutely critical in delivering that critical national infrastructure. So yeah, really thanks for reminding me on that one.
If I could just add as well, I applied when from my for graduate schemes in National Grid, WSP, ACOM, and I got M Group that I hadn't heard of, but I'm actually working with all of those people now. So it's just like you don't have to it doesn't matter what company you work for in energy, you're working with everybody.
Yeah. And they're all really important. They're all kind of links in that chain delivering specific services in, which is great to hear from yourself. So thanks very much for that. So look, thinking about this, thinking about advice, so people coming into the sector, what would you say to someone thinking about a career in the energy sector right now? They're on the call, and what's great about it? What advice would you give them, or what advice would you give your younger self even? Lorna, shall I come to you first?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've spoken about how much of a sort of diverse sector it is. You're never going to be bored working in the energy sector. There's plenty to get involved in, no matter what your interests are. Obviously, we're going through a massive period of transformation, and looking at the future of energy and how that fits into the UK strategy. There's a huge amount of innovation which comes with that, which by default is a really exciting type of role to be involved in. I think advice for younger self or anyone else starting out is everyone gets imposter syndrome, no matter how far advanced they are in their career. Everyone's going to have those doubts in their mind of, do I know it all? Am I good enough? Should I really be here? And it's just trying to empower yourself to acknowledge whatever that voice is and just crack on anyway. Don't stand in your own way, because there's very, very few people that will stand fully comfortable in their role with no doubts ever. So don't let that be a self-imposed barrier. Everyone deserves to be in the role that they've chosen, and you can make it work for you.
Fantastic. That's some great advice there. I think I should listen to that myself. I think there'd be a lot of people out there thinking, oh, is this really a sector for me? Aren't they all technical roles? Aren't they all really difficult? But I think there's a role for everyone. So yeah, people should go and have a look and see what it's all about. Absolutely. Abigail, what about yourself?
I think Lorna said it all there, really, but it's a great sector to get into. There's loads of different directions you can take. Again, advice, if you take it from me, you don't have to be an expert in everything. You'll meet seasoned professionals that still have questions, don't know the answers. And you just need to be curious and willing to learn. You just need to put yourself out there. There's no silly questions, as everyone says. And there's loads of different roles you can take. If you want to talk to people all day about all the many problems in the world, there's roles that do that. If you want to quietly work on spreadsheets, loads of people do that. Or if you want to travel the country and go to all the different sites and see the practical work, there's loads of opportunities to do that. So it's not just one size does meet all, because there's so many different things that you can do. It's not just sitting by a desk. There's so many different opportunities.
Yeah, that's great advice as well. And I think as well, probably something Lorna and Abigail, we should talk to this one as well. I think that the progression routes within the businesses as well are great, aren't they? Because the opportunities from coming in at a level, whichever level that may be. And bear in mind, we do recruit chief executives into chief exec roles in, it's not just homegrown, I suppose. But whatever that route is, then there is a there is a development plan. There is an evolution of your skills as well, isn't it? Which I think is another great component of the energy sector. And I certainly from my experience, those training interventions and those plans then allow you to develop and become capable for that next role, and therefore those progression routes. So I think that's really important as well. So Kareena, what about yourself? What's from your angle?
I will kind of just say, like, doing research on the different jobs within the energy industry, like Abigail and Lorna touched on, there's so many variety of jobs nowadays, whether or not you want to sit at a desk, if you prefer like the software side of it, if you prefer being outside, hands-on, traveling, that kind of part of it. I think just doing the research on what you think you'd prefer. Obviously, when I applied, I knew that I kind of wanted to be out in the field, traveling, working with my hands on pieces of equipment, getting involved in that kind of way. So I kind of knew that that was for me. But even if you apply to a job or an apprenticeship and it's not for you, once your foot is in the company, there's so many different avenues to go down, I would say.
Sure.
There's so many different opportunities. Like, you could do your apprenticeship or you could join your job and you might find a better job that's more appealing to your skills, what you enjoy. So yeah, that's kind of the advice I'd give.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. And look, just to build on, excuse me, just to build on that ever so slightly, when you were looking at the sector as a potential career choice, then I mean, why did you choose the pathways that you chose? Graduates and apprentices, and were there any other options available to you, or did it seem like the best thing, or did you come to a decision about joining the sector through, perhaps if you went on the graduate program, slightly later than you perhaps thought you would? I mean, yeah, why choose the entry levels that you did? Abigail, shall I come to you first?
Yeah. I'm a bit basic. I kind of saw it as a natural progression from uni to just go into a graduate scheme. I did go traveling beforehand, and I thought after that it's move to London, get a good job, build up from there. So I didn't really take any creative route, but I started in energy efficiency because I did my dissertation on it and I loved that topic and I wanted to get practical experience of what I'd written about. So I reached out to a specific company that did just that. They pointed me towards the M Group grad scheme, and that gave me the opportunity to be on the grad scheme. And actually, it's a rotational grad scheme, as I said. So now I can experience different sectors over the 2-year scheme. And this really appealed to me because if I ended up not enjoying my first part, I had the opportunity to go into other areas and experience what they were like. So then I could really find what I wanted for my career going forward. So I liked that it wasn't linear. I could follow my interests as they developed, because like when you pick your A levels, when you pick your uni topic, when you go, you don't know if you're going to enjoy it. And I like that I didn't know if I was going to enjoy this job, and actually I have enjoyed it, but it's great to see different sectors and that I get to experience that.
Yeah. Look, that's great. And I'm really interested. I'm sure we could talk all day about this, about the grad scheme and about that rotation. But that sounds really interesting in terms of gaining a greater understanding for the entire business. And M Group, again, is huge, isn't it? You know, and how do you understand all aspects of that? But I mean, I'm sure you're going to be on a learning journey for quite some time yet. So,
Quite some time.
so good luck with that. Absolutely. Kareena, what about yourself?
So I feel like one thing that is really important when you're obviously applying to a job is the qualifications you have. At the end of the day, if you don't have the right, for example, the graduate role, you have to go to uni, you have to have a degree to apply to that. Obviously, I didn't go to uni and I knew I didn't want to do that, but I had my A levels, I had my GCSEs, and like the minimum requirement was to kind of apply with A to C, GCSE in English, maths, and science. So it kept it really broad. I didn't focus on one thing at school that I kind of wanted to do. So obviously with my qualifications, I applied to the role that I have now, and I've come out of the role and realised that I can progress without having a degree. Like I can get that with a company now, and it's things like that that you don't really know until you join the company. But the routes open up to you the longer you stay at the company pretty much, and the more you know.
Yeah. And look, I think that's a great example of the various levels or different types
Definitely.
of jobs which require different types of
Yeah.
both knowledge and skills, I think, because that's really
Mhm.
important, isn't it? As you look at the skill set across a business, and when we talk to a lot of organizations about what their requirements are around developing certain skills, etc. You know, those sorts of things come into that equation, because one job doesn't fit all. So therefore, you do need different types of people coming in. So yeah, it's great to hear that. And
Definitely.
yeah, and certainly a very exciting career at National Grid, I'm sure. Absolutely.
It
So Lorna, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I guess my route in was not particularly traditional. I mentioned zoology, and now I'm in the energy sector, so that's not linear either. Um, but it did come back organically, and I think through the career involvement I've had, I can sort of paint a golden thread between each role where I've actually not quite jumped the fence, but you know, every role that I have been in has exposed me to different stakeholders, opportunities, initiatives where I've then thought, oh, want to look at that a bit further, and so on. So what that looks like in practice was I came into a employee placement program that then became permanent. That was very much education based. There was also a project ongoing with that as well. So that was my introduction to project management. But from the education role, it was very much about introducing alternative technologies. It was very focused on STEM within schools. And then we did a lot of work closely with the local authority. So then through working with the local authority, I got closer to what they did as a whole, specifically within the energy sector, and ended up working for them as an economic advisor within
Wow.
renewables. So the renewable energy, you know, experience I had from my previous job then moved me into that, and then working for that local authority, the H105 project that SGN is now delivering was in the very early concept stages. So I was being engaged as a local authority where the project was based, and I thought, actually, I'd much rather be on the forefront of that project delivery. So
Sure.
I'm going to go work for SGN instead. So you actually get exposed to lots of different opportunities just through your day-to-day engagement in your current role, and that can be a good sort of test of, okay, would I rather go and do that and work it that way?
Yeah. Look, that's a really interesting routine, isn't it? Well, you said it's not linear. I think the skills, obviously, absolutely, the skills which you bring, I think, through what you've learned through your graduate program, and then I think it's an excellent example of how you've made those skills transferable, and how they're able to transition into various roles. So I think for those out there that are perhaps going through graduate programs, or thinking about where should they be looking. So I think that's a really great example actually about how transferable those skills are. So don't let anything kind of hold you down, and go and have a look at some of those roles. So thanks all for that. So look, I was going to talk about learning on the job and what skills you've developed, and what you picked up which you couldn't have in the classroom. But I think we've kind of explored a number of those areas already, and I think some of the examples which you've shown around internally within your organizations about how you've developed and got to the point that you're at, I think a true testament to yourselves. But I was just going to kind of focus in on, I suppose, where you've now been in the industry for a variety amount of years, I suppose, and thinking about some of the people that you've met and some of the roles which you've seen moving around, certainly in graduate programs and other areas. What do you think you would say to someone already in work who's perhaps considering retraining and coming into the energy sector? Because it's great, it's a shed load of opportunities out there. So why shouldn't we get people in that are already quite well established in other industries? And I put that in the context of perhaps people that are coming across from oil and gas or declining industries, maybe post rollout of fiber broadband, maybe people that have worked in organizations that have been delivering that work. So what would you say to people that are considering a move from another sector? Abigail, shall I come to you first on that one?
So I just think that fresh perspectives are just really valuable in the industry. You meet people that have been in it for 15, 20 years, and they might be used to doing things how they do it, and somebody new coming in might offer a new perspective, a new view, new opinions, and it might be something they've not thought of before. The sector values all kinds of backgrounds. There's plenty of room for people that want a career change. And I think it's, if you want to be a part of the future, your experience will probably count for more than you expect. I've worked with graduates, I've worked with people that have again been in it for 30 years, the site managers, different people like that. They've not all come from graduate backgrounds, they've all come in from different places, and they're enjoying it. They're obviously been in the job, they've been successful, so I think there's plenty of room, and I think fresh perspectives are needed.
Brilliant. Thanks, Abigail. That's a really good shout, isn't it? Fresh perspectives, coming at things with experience from another sector, I think it's worth its weight in gold. And we often talk about benchmarking, don't we, of organizations and going out and have a look in what other sectors are doing. I think that's a really good point that you make there. Thanks very much for that. Lorna, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think maybe just building on that theme of the value in mentorship or shadowing. I think often, people might see that as something that those that are more junior in their career should take advantage of to progress, but actually mentorship and shadowing is all just about continued learning and development. And personally, I don't think that's got an end date on it, regardless of where you are in your career. So I would encourage people to be brave and be bold and consider what sectors you may want to work in, regardless of how established you are in your career, and write out to those organisations, because you will be amazed at how many people are willing to give up their time to allow you to get a bit of exposure to that industry. And it's something that I've taken the initiative to do, and been amazed at how accommodating people are. And again, that imposter syndrome can creep in, but don't let it stand in your way. I think it's a great opportunity. It's open to anyone that's brave enough to take that leap of faith and do it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lorna. And yeah, I fully endorse that as well. It's absolutely to be supported. It's great to hear how I think within your organizations, people are really willing to share, mentor, coach, and guide people along as well. So yeah, really, really great. Thank you. And Kareena, finally from yourself.
I would kind of just like say that the people that you work with are always like here for you to train. So I feel like a lot of people wouldn't want to come at a later point in their career because they feel as if, they've got to learn so much stuff. But I feel like maybe having people around you. So in my team, for example, having the people to train you, having the exposure to be able to move your way up in the company and having just a great team around you to learn from, I think is really, I think should be attracting towards people who are already in work and want to join. For example, someone in my team actually came from another electricity business, UK Power Network. And he kind of came because there was no more progression for him. He was kind of stuck at his role. There was no way to kind of move up, and he did want to make that move up. So he joined National Grid, and now he's working towards his senior authorized person. So having the ability to come to a company and work your way up and achieve more and kind of progress, which some people might want to do, which they can't do at their current company. Say that's a good example.
Yeah, that's a great shout. And there are obviously progression routes at UK Power Networks, right, Kareena? We're not saying that there's not.
Definitely. I mean, it depends on your team. Some managers, they might not want you to, but obviously it's different. Like I think UKPN is smaller substation, smaller equipment. Obviously, National Grid are a huge company. We're all over the UK, like UKPN, but even the different job roles that they could progress in within National Grid that might not be available for them at UKPN.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Good. Okay, look, that's it for questions from me. I'm now just going to go to the Q&A section. But before I do so, we're going to ask some questions at the end of this session. I'll pop a slide up just to give your feedback, and there's a few questions in there, so please don't everyone shoot off as we get towards the end. But I'm just going to go through some of these questions. There's a question which has come up on here about specific roles around data science. And one of the things which we haven't mentioned yet is around the technology evolution, or extensively anyway. And just from your perspectives within your organizations, and I'm not going to ask everyone these questions, but Lorna, shall I come to you first? Just in terms of data science, are there many roles going within your business in that kind of area?
Yeah, I mean, data farms are a huge part of our business, and it will be something that features in a number of different departments. I think, we are driven by demand data. So when we're looking at a lot of future energy modelling, we obviously have to look at demand forecasts and profiling of renewables. That is all very much heavily data-driven activity. So particularly in the innovation space, yes, we are very heavily data focused. I may be a little bit sheltered from it, to be honest. I've had the blinkers on this project for 7 years now, so I'm not totally au fait with the wider opportunities currently available through SGN or the other gas networks. But given what I know of the industry and the sector, there's bound to be opportunities there, and it's maybe just about understanding a bit more. Maybe it's badged up as something slightly different. Maybe data science is an element of the roles that are being advertised, but it's not advertised as a, data science analysis. Whatever it might be.
Yeah. Look, you're right, and certainly from our discussions with many of the organisations, the 70 or so organisations that we work with across energy and the wider utilities industry, they're talking about OT, so operations technology. So I'm thinking about SCADA and remote operation of systems and digitalisation of networks. there is a huge transition which is happening right now about distribution system operation, which is looking at balancing the grid around from microgeneration right the way up to some of the new nuclear power stations, gigawatts, which are being produced at the moment. So there's always room for those data jobs out there. So thanks very much for that. There is a question in here around understanding the nuances of the energy sector and about the language and some of the jargon which is used, which I do appreciate. And I've tried to keep the jargon to an absolute minimum within this session, but I do appreciate I've used a couple of acronyms just recently, which people may not understand. But I would encourage you to go and have a look at. I'll pop up a website, and we've got actually two potential jobs websites, which I'll show you in a second. One being Energy and Utility Careers and Jobs, and we've also shared one of our partner organisations, iGEM Jobs as well. But definitely looking at expanding that, and there'll be a heap of other names up there as we go forward. Someone's mentioned about having a electrical power engineering degree, MSc, in fact, masters. So the advice that I would give you is keep trying with those organisations. I would say go and have those conversations and develop your knowledge and understanding. And even if you can't get a job now, come back and keep looking at those, because there are plenty of need for those as we go forward. I talked earlier about 312,000 people needed across energy and utilities, and they are technical, managerial, as well as entry-level type roles. So there are plenty of roles out there. It may be just a timing issue. Someone's asked about software engineers, I think, which fits probably into that same space that we talked about. And certainly around how we move forward with some of those roles and the scale of progression. But we definitely know up until 2030 there is a significant acceleration. But what I will say as well, it does go beyond 2030. So keep looking at those potential roles which you could get into. There's a couple of questions in here about, which I'm not going to put to the panelists, but there's a couple of questions about sponsoring. As well. So I would encourage you to contact the organisation which you're looking to get into as a potential sponsor of you coming in from overseas, because there are a continued opportunity for people to come in with specific skills. So absolutely do engage with those organisations that you've targeted. I've got a question here from James. I work as an employer advisor in DWP Sheffield. We're trying to get 18 to 24-year-old demographic interested in green energy sector. Is there a digital information that could be forwarded to myself? Absolutely, I can forward that on to you, James. But what I will say is Destination Energy website will be launching with a fair wind and being very optimistic on the 14th of May. So we will be directing all the assets and all the information towards that website. But I've had several conversations with some of your strategic partnership leads within DWP, and I'm looking to brief DWP on the basis of we're doing a sector entry webinar on the 20th of May as the second episode of this series of 12 webinars. So hopefully you can get involved in that as well. Someone's asked about apprenticeships are a great entry route into jobs for those who may not be ready. Ensure engagement at local level is really important to inspire. What pre-apprenticeship routes or work placements are available? We are in discussion at the moment around a work placement and pre-apprenticeships. We have recently run a sector entry program, actually, which has looked at identifying some of the core skills, and we're looking to evolve that as we go through the next 6 months or so with DWP, and therefore there may be an opportunity to get engaged in one of those, but there will be more news to follow from that. What else have we got? Sponsorship opportunities. That is probably it. So look, just to come back to the panel, and if you were to share one insight with the rest of the with the audience, what would it be, and what should be their key takeaway from this whole discussion? And appreciating that Kareena's had to leave us, it's going to be Abigail and Lorna, down to yourselves. So Abigail, shall I come to you first? What would be that one big key takeaway you'd give people?
Put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to apply to jobs that you don't even think you'd be qualified for. But if it's something that interests you, make them see why you'd be key in that role. Just don't be disheartened. It took me a year to get a job, and I was so grateful. And I did that by reaching out to a specific company. I know that sounds like a dream, and they just offer you the role because you reached out to them specifically, but it's just about putting yourself out there. And if it's something that you want to do, you should keep trying, keep educating yourself, go on webinars such as these. I know there's loads of free webinars about things to do with energy, sustainability, find your niche, just get really interested in it. And, you know, always a little bit of manifestation always works. So it's just keep trying, don't let it get disheartened, something will come of it. There's so many roles available, and we need you in the industry.
Thank you very much. Very poignant. And Lorna, how about yourself?
I think it's worth giving some proper consideration and time input into your profile and your exposure. So consider how you appear online. Companies will do online searches of you, whether that's LinkedIn profiles or other social media. So just make sure you have things private that you want to keep private, and make sure professional platforms such as LinkedIn remain professional. Because that is potentially an employer's first impression of you. So, you know, make sure the image is one that you want to portray. As Abby says, if you can get along to things like conferences, I think in-person engagement can be really useful. Obviously, webinars are brilliant and a good introduction to a topic. But if you actually want to sort of raise your profile a bit and get yourself known, and you know, engage with the speakers that have been involved, engage with the other conference attendees, you never know what indirect routes could open up for you through conversation. And then I think finally, don't worry about not having it all figured out. I never thought I was going to go and work for a gas distribution network. It wasn't a dream of mine when I was a little girl. It was not something that I worked towards in school. It's not something that I studied for at university, but I'm proud of the career that I've managed to establish. And I don't think anyone ever has it all figured out. I mean, I don't feel like that now. And, you know, just don't put too much pressure on yourself. Things that will fall into place. And on Abby's point for manifestation, for those that are into that, yeah, absolutely. But what's meant to be will meant to be. So be patient with it, and it will happen.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much. Look, that is exactly what I wanted to hear and what I wanted from this session today. Yeah, that encouragement. Tell people, go out and get it. Don't be scared of your demons. Just get out there and do it. And for anyone watching today, look, this energy transition, it is happening today, whether we like it or not, whether we act or not. The question is who gets to be part of delivering it. So energy needs people with skills, or the willingness to learn skills, with curiosity and with purpose. And there's never been a better time to get involved. So I'm just going to pop a slide up on screen here, just so you can kind of have a look at. There's a couple of links and a bit of information on there. I just encourage people to stay connected. And episode 2, Destination Energy, will be on the 20th of May between 1 and 2, where we'll be discovering more about the need for those over 40,000 new entrants to the sector over the next 5 years to deliver that net zero and mitigate the risk of climate change. To stay informed, please register for the next webinar using the QR code on screen, and we look forward to joining us then. If you're looking for a job right now, please visit the links on the screen there. So Energy and Utility Careers and Jobs and iGEM Jobs. There will be a heap of others. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the QR code set up in time for this session, but they will be there. So look, those roles are live. They're real jobs. So if you have an interest in those, if you're ready to apply for those jobs, please do go ahead and do so. You can also sign up to the Energy and Utility Careers and Jobs talent pool, where you'll get kept informed about the information which is regularly coming out from over 70 organisations advertising jobs on a regular basis, or they will be certainly over the next 12 months. And get involved. So finally, as we develop the series of webinars, we're keen to hear from you. So please use the QR code, tell us what you thought, and let us know if there's anything you would like us to cover in later episodes. Thank you very much to all my panelists. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you again on the 20th of May. Thank you very much, and goodbye.